Good evening and welcome to Talking Sports with Evan. I'm Evan Latalis, and then again, this is Talking Sports with Evan, a Tuesday edition of Talking Sports with Evan. Typically, lately been Wednesday or Thursday, but this is a Tuesday edition of today's show, and it's a weekend recap. Lots have happened. There's a lot of things that has happened since I did my last show, especially over the weekend, starting with the announcement of Aaron Rodgers signing with the Steelers and officially became official over the weekend. Now, I didn't talk about it much last week. I know I'm late to the party on it, but hey, I wanted to make 100% certain that that contract was signed, sealed, and delivered before I gave a thought on it, because what I didn't want to have happen is I give a thought on it and then poof, he doesn't sign with them. So that's happened. The Brewers' bats kind of disappeared again. They returned home after a great road trip, and the bats have kind of gone silent once again. Got some thoughts on that. Jaire Alexander, no longer a Green Bay Packer. He was officially released yesterday. It was announced early in the morning that that's what the Packers were planning to do. Then it became official, and they're doing it in a way that is very interesting to me. And then Giannis has said that he is pretty much planning to stay in Milwaukee. And with that, all I got to say is, well, no crap, Sherlock, to all those that were arguing about him leaving Milwaukee or asking to be traded or whatever else they were discussing. So, anyways, you can find Talking Sports with Evan on YouTube and Facebook, titled Talking Sports with Evan. You can also find it on X at Evan with Sports. Right above my head here, you see the different ways you can watch the show live or watch it later each and every week. You can also listen to the podcast version found Spotify and iTunes, and really anywhere else you get your podcast, you can find it. So I'm going to start with Aaron Rodgers and then switch to the Green Bay Packers during today's show. So start with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, and the only reason why I'm bringing up Aaron Rodgers is, let's be real, is because he is a former Green Bay Packer quarterback, probably one of the most talented quarterbacks in Green Bay Packer history. And people want to argue Bart Starr still being the best quarterback in Green Bay history, which fair enough if you want to make that argument. I'm not going to argue with you too much because he did lead the Packers to 5 championships. However, from a pure talent standpoint, there's not a quarterback in Packer history and very few quarterbacks in NFL history that have done or can do the things that Aaron Rodgers used to do with the football. And you're welcome to join on the chat if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube or X. Just comment on the video and give me your thoughts on Aaron Rodgers going to Pittsburgh. But at the end of the day, good fit for him. He has nothing but respect for Mike Tomlin. He still wants to play. The Steelers as an organization is probably the closest to the Packers organization that there is. And after playing 2 years in that complete and utter cluster, you know what, in New York, which New York and the Jets and the Giants are complete disasters. And Aaron Rodgers found out the hard way that grass isn't always greener on the other side. Yes, I know the Packers and the Jets both have green in their colors. Pun intended, their grass isn't always greener on the other side. Well, now he's going to give Pittsburgh a chance and see what happens there. I think with DK Metcalf, I think they have the offense to do what Rodgers wants to do. Obviously, the offensive line could be better, but it is what it is right now in Pittsburgh. And the thing is, a lot, myself included, for a little while, have been critical of how long this process has dragged out. But in reality, thinking back, it makes a lot of sense. The Steelers and Rodgers were both in agreement that Rodgers would sign when he signed. The Steelers knew he was going to sign with them. He knew he was going to sign with the Steelers. And it was just, my buddy Scott said it. It was he didn't want to go through the non-mandatory portions of the offseason. He wanted to enjoy his offseason and not worry about being criticized by not being that voluntary OTAs. Well, now he signs because now it's mandatory OTAs, and now he his things with the team he now has to do. I don't think Rodgers missed too much time. I'm sure Arthur Smith has been in constant communication with him, like kind of giving him the, talking to him about what things Rodgers likes, what things he doesn't like in regards to a play call, like a game plan and game planning and playbooks and things like that. Because now Arthur Smith is going to have to basically throw away his playbook and make it work for what Aaron Rodgers wants to do. So I am not surprised he signed with Pittsburgh. The only other team that made sense in my head for him to sign with was Minnesota. And I think if Minnesota would have been even shown, I think if Minnesota would have shown even a remote interest in Rodgers, instead of putting all their eggs in the J.J. McCarthy basket, I think Rodgers would have waited even longer to see what happens in Minnesota. Because Minnesota, first-year starting quarterback, they're saying all the right things about this quarterback. He is the future. They feel they have a 3-year window to win a Super Bowl with him. But in reality, nobody knows what kind of professional quarterback J.J. McCarthy is going to be. And the Vikings have a offensive skill position players that are good enough to compete for Super Bowls right now. The only thing holding them back really is that quarterback position, and the defense is a little shaky. That was the only other spot I saw Rodgers potentially going. And it wasn't going to be the same reason why Brett Favre went to the Vikings, which was to quote-unquote stick it to the Packers. Aaron Rodgers would go with the Vikings because he would give Aaron Rodgers the best shot of getting to and winning a Super Bowl. Because I'm very high on your Jefferson, your Atkinson, your Aaron Jones, your T.J. Hawkinson. I'm very high on those guys, and the work the Vikings did on the offensive line. I think Rodgers, a player of his caliber, even at 41, could help that team make a deep playoff run. Now in Pittsburgh, hard to say what's going to happen because the AFC has a lot more talent, especially at the quarterback position, than the NFC. In his own division, he's got Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. In the conference, add Pat Mahomes and add the quarterback in Buffalo, Josh Allen. A lot more talent, especially at the quarterback position in the AFC than there is the NFC in regards to high-level talent. So he's going to have that going for him. He's got two very good teams in his division alone that could compete for the playoffs. And then, of course, there's the Cleveland Browns. Not going to spend a lot of time there. But I think it was a great move overall for Rodgers. And I guess we'll see what he does in Pittsburgh. And also congratulations to Aaron Rodgers for now being a married man. So he found a woman to marry, and we'll, see how that progresses. But like I said, best of luck, congrats to him and best of luck moving forward. And it'll be interesting in October when Pittsburgh and the Packers play in Pittsburgh now on Saturday Night Football. And I think the initial plan was to actually have that game in Ireland. But then when you had the potential of Aaron Rodgers going to Pittsburgh, they couldn't have that game in Ireland anymore. They had to have it in Pittsburgh on Sunday Night Football. They couldn't have it in Ireland at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. They needed it at prime time. So moving on to the Green Bay Packers. The Packers mandatory mini camps going on right now, and roughly 7 in the morning. Yeah, about 7 in the morning yesterday. Just seeing when I got the alert on my phone. I haven't deleted that alert yet. But about 7 a.m., roughly 7 a.m. yesterday, there was news started to break that the Packers were planning to release Jaire Alexander during the day. And lots of questions circulating is why. And there's just a lot of reaction overall about Jaire Alexander being released from the Green Bay Packers. Just a lot of reaction overall that I kind of want to address. First of all, not surprised. I was a little surprised when the news came out that the Packers and Jaire were working on a resolution to bring him back to Green Bay with a restructured, redone contract. In reality, that meant a pay cut. He was going to lose less guaranteed money, and he would have to work on bringing the rest of that money back in incentives and in bonuses and things like that. And clearly, Jaire didn't want to do it that way. Oh, well. So I'm not surprised. First people I want to address. So when that Matt Schneidman article came out that Jaire was planning to attend mandatory minicamp and they were working on trying to come to a resolution, lots of people started bashing Rob Demoski and company who have been talking basically since the season ended that Jaire was likely gone. The Packers are looking to either trade or release him, and he was very unlikely to be a Green Bay Packer in 2025. Well, the news that he was going to attend mandatory OTAs and working on a contract resolution led to a lot of, haha, you're wrong, you don't know what you're talking about. Packer fans taking victory laps and laughing at the beat writers, saying that they don't know what they're talking about, they never know anything, and whatnot. I said it then. And I'll say it now. There was nothing to take victory laps from a couple weeks ago because there was no guarantee that he was going to be back in Green Bay. Nothing came out 2 weeks ago that said Jaire Alexander will be a Green Bay Packer in 2025. It came out that he was talking to the team, trying to rework a contract, potentially, and he was going to attend mandatory OTAs. Why was he going to attend mandatory OTAs? Couple reasons. One, he doesn't want to get fined. He doesn't go to OTAs. He loses out on bonuses and potentially could get fined for not being there. He doesn't want to lose out on bonuses. He doesn't want to get fined. He wants his money. The other reason why those are the biggest reasons why he goes to OTAs. And the biggest reason why getting a new contract done before OTA started and why that was kind of a deadline, because I've heard, why not do it in March? Why not do it during the draft? Why not do it then? Why not do it there? Because the Packers didn't really have a deadline that they had to let him go. There is nothing in March that would change his contract than the money that they would save or not save if they let him go in March. There is no, they couldn't find any takers during the draft for him. Understandably, he didn't want to renegotiate his contract with whatever team he was being traded to, hence they couldn't find any trade partners. It takes two sides to tango. The Packers wanted to move him. Other teams weren't ready to meet that price because they knew Jaire was not going to negotiate with the Green Bay Packers. The reason why the Packers don't want him at mandatory OTAs, if he stubs his toe in the weight room, if he drops a weight on his foot, if he tweaks a hamstring while doing warm-ups, if he steps in a hole while at the Nitschke field, and he gets hurt at all during this offseason program, the Packers he's now guaranteed the money the Packers have left on his contract. That money becomes guaranteed if there is an injury. So he says he's going to show up to OTAs. They don't want him at OTAs unless there's a new contract, hence why the first day of mandatory OTAs sprung the Packers' action, which was, we couldn't find any takers, we're going to release him. And the Packers are absorbing the entire dead money in this year's cap rather than spreading it out over two years like typically happens if you do a post-June 1st cut. So basically, the Packers just want this money off their books. They don't want any money left on the books from Jaire. They want to be done with it. Fair enough. I get it. Now to what? So I kind of explained the why they released him now. Kind of explained the reaction that people had a couple weeks ago, and I'm going to talk about the reaction people had yesterday and today. And if you were on social media and you were reading people's comments about Jaire Alexander no longer being a Green Bay Packer, you would think the sky was falling. The Packers have the worst cornerback room in the entire NFL. This is awful. Goody is an idiot. Why did Goody release him? Why did Goody whatever? I'm not trying to sound like a Goody stan, but the world is not ending because they released Jaire Alexander. Does having a healthy Jaire Alexander in the cornerback room make you closer to a championship? Yes. But the key word I said, a healthy Jaire Alexander. He has not been healthy in a couple years now. He's chronically injured, chronically dealing with something or another. It was time to cut bait. I don't have any problem cutting bait with Jaire Alexander at this point. It was time. It was time to move on. And is the cornerback room worse not having him in the cornerback room? Yes. But it's not the end of the world. It's not the sky is falling, the season's over, the Packers are going to be a laughing stock in the NFL. The Packers were without Jaire Alexander for a good portion of the 2025 season, a good portion of the 2024 season, a good portion of the 2022 season. I think 2023 was the last time he played like 15 games. Point I'm making is they were without Jaire Alexander for a good chunk of a number of seasons already. And actually, my math is off. This is 2025. So 2024 and 2023, they were without him for a good chunk of the year. 2022, he played most of the year. 2021, he's mostly injured. The point I'm trying to make, in 2024, with Jaire playing in 7 games only, the Packers got by without it. They made it work. They were a top 10 defense in the NFL last season without Jaire Alexander in that cornerback room for a good chunk of games. And I'm not saying that he isn't any good and he doesn't make the team better. My point is I'm saying is they can get by. Do I think they need to improve the room somehow? Yes. But ultimately, the Packers are doing what they always do, and they're hoping and praying that the guys like Valentine takes a step in year 3. A guy like Hobbs brings some talent and upside to the locker room that they weren't getting from Eric Stokes, and that Keyshawn Nixon continues to show the improvement as a defensive back that Keyshawn Nixon has shown over the course of the last couple years. The Packers are doing what they always do. They're hoping and praying that guys take the next step forward. They did it with the wide receiver room last year and clearly didn't work out. Nobody took a step forward, and now they're doing it with both the edge room, other than a couple draft picks, and now the cornerback room. They're hoping that guys take that next step. If they do, great, because I think Carrington Valentine is a damn good football player, and I think he's going to have a breakout year from what I've seen with him. Not sure what to think about Hobbs, not sure what to think about Nixon being even more of a boundary corner than last year. And obviously, King from Penn State has a cast on his arm right now, but the Packers took him in the 7th round when there were pundits that were talking about prior to his last year at Penn State that he was going to be a first-round pick. So the Packers are banking on young guys taking the next step in their NFL career, as they always do. Do I like it that that's what they always do? No. I wish that they would see the weaknesses and the holes in their roster and try to address it appropriately, like bring in a Asante Samuel Jr., who's only 25 and still a free agent for, I guess, medical reasons, but he's only 25. Maybe bring him in for the cornerback room and bring in more bodies, but I guess they'd rather put Bull Melton there. So the other issue I have that I've seen is that because the Packers let Jaire go, it means that Goody is not serious about trying to be a Super Bowl contender. Goody wants to win a Super Bowl. I'm not going to say that Goody does not want to win a Super Bowl, but Goody wants to do it his way. He doesn't want to do it with Joe Blow on the internet or Joe Blow from Facebook or X or Twitter or anything want to do. Goody wants to do it his way. That is what Goody's looking to do. He wants to win a Super Bowl his way. And that is through draft and develop and win as a team and not rely on quote-unquote superstars. He wants the guys in his own locker room to develop. Unfortunately, Jaire couldn't stay healthy anymore. I wish he would do more sometimes to bring in veterans, invest in veteran guys. Trey Hendrickson, for example, would be a great addition to this team. But he would rather bank on a Lucas Van Ness having a third-year jump or Rashawn Gary finally having the breakout year we've been hoping for the last, basically since he came back from his torn ACL season. That ACL year was going to be his year to totally shine, but unfortunately he's not been able to stay healthy since. Not say able to stay healthy, that's not the right word. He hasn't been able to produce since coming back from his torn ACL. But the sky is not falling. The season is not over. It's only June 10th. It's OTAs. There's plenty of time to figure out what this roster is going to look like come August and September and even October. Remember, the initial 53-man roster isn't necessarily going to be the same 53-man roster, and the Packers have their first game of the year, as we saw last year when they traded for Malik Willis. They traded for or claimed off waivers or traded for Narvison as a kicker, and they let Andres Carlson go, and then they ended up signing McManus as a kicker. So just because the roster is what it is now doesn't mean that's what it's going to be down the road. And exhausting. The Jaire news and the Packer news is in general have been exhausting. And good thing is Elton Jenkins is at OTAs. That's a good thing. I know he wants a new reworked contract if he's going to be playing center. I get it. But at least he's there and other guys are getting work. I'm not worried about Elton Jenkins missing practices or not practicing right now because he's a veteran. He knows how to play the game of football. He'll be fine just picking it up in training camp and playing center then. He just wants a reworked contract if he's going to commit to playing center. Because moving to center, he's going to lose money. I get it. Moving on to the Milwaukee Bucks. Before I jump to some Milwaukee Brewers. Moving on to the Milwaukee Bucks. The national pundits, once again, have been wrong about everything involving Giannis. Giannis was never going to ask for a trade. Giannis is not going to ask for a trade. The only way Giannis gets traded is if the Bucks decide that is a step they have to take in order to retool to become a championship caliber team again. But the Bucks are not going to trade Giannis really either. So I guess I should say the Bucks aren't going to trade Giannis unless Giannis asks for a trade, and Giannis is not going to ask for a trade. So that the only way the Bucks would trade Giannis outside of that, like I said, if they thought that's what they had to do. But Giannis is never going to ask for a trade. He isn't going to do that to Milwaukee. So if the Bucks are going to move him, it's because the Bucks decide to move him. They're the ones that are going to have the quote-unquote egg on their face, not Giannis. Giannis is very smart. But we hear pretty much since 2019 that Giannis is going to go somewhere else, but he signs his extensions. He signed his extension twice since 2019. Signed a Supermax, and then he signed a Supermax extension. Does that mean Giannis will stay after he becomes a free agent in a couple of years if he doesn't sign an extension? No. But at this point, Giannis is not leaving. And Giannis said in an interview in a sports entity out of Brazil that he hopes to be back to the NBA Finals with the Bucks. Giannis has not given any indication that he is a guy that wants to leave Milwaukee. He has not given any indication that he's a guy that wants to be traded from the Bucks. I don't know where they get their stories every year about Giannis. This is the year. I think it's just hope. It's hope and a prayer that this is the year we're going to be right about Giannis, so we can say we told you so, but instead you're wrong every single year. And here's the thing, Giannis, the people that cover Giannis on a day-to-day basis are baffled at the Giannis wants out talk because Giannis is not giving anybody the indication that he wants out of Milwaukee. So another victory for the people that actually cover the Bucks and another loss for the national media. And I appreciate Giannis's loyalty. He very easily could ask to be moved because, Bucks have limitations on how to build their roster, but Giannis wants to go back to the NBA Finals with the Milwaukee Bucks if he can do it. And I applaud him for that. And I appreciate what Giannis wants to do with the Bucks. Finally, the Milwaukee Brewers. Some good Milwaukee Brewers news. Jacob Mizorowski, one of their top pitching prospects, is going to be called up allegedly to be the starting pitcher on Thursday for the Milwaukee Brewers against the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, I know the reason, I know a lot of people have been clamoring for Jacob Mizorowski to be caught up when guys like Logan Henderson and Carlos Rodriguez and this guy and that guy were sent down, brought up, sent down, brought up. And the reason it came out the reason they had not brought up Jacob Mizorowski yet, because when they bring him up to the big league roster, they want to make it that he's here to stay. They don't want to yo-yo him between AAA and the big league. And the other thing you got to do with Jacob Mizorowski is you have to find a roster spot for him. He's not currently on the 40-man roster. And the other pitchers they were sending down and bringing up were obviously already on their 40-man roster. So the Brewers do have to make a corresponding move to their 40-man roster and then send somebody to AAA before they can bring them up. Now, the question is, who is that going to be? I don't know. I think it might be Alexander, who they just sent to AAA today. They did bring up a pitcher for bullpen help today. My guess is that he gets sent down on Thursday and Jacob Mizorowski gets brought up and Alexander gets designated for assignment to be taken off the 40-man roster. That's my guess is what's going to happen. Also, the possibility that there might be somebody added to the 60-day IL as well. Maybe they add Garrett Mitchell to the 60-day IL. I don't know, just to open up a spot for now. Because if they do add Garrett Mitchell to the 60-day IL, it's retroactive to when you first got placed on the 10 or 15-day IL. So it just doesn't restart the clock. It just gives them a little bit more time to work on Mitchell getting healthy. In regards to the product on the field, well, currently the Brewers are up 2-1. The Brewers have not scored a lot of runs lately. They scored a lot of runs on the road. They destroyed Philly with their bats. They destroyed Cincinnati for the most part, except for one game with their bats. But now all of a sudden the bats, when they get back home, want to fall silent. And when you're young, and it's going to sound like I'm making excuses, outside of a couple players, the Brewers are a very young team. And when you have a very young team like they do, there's going to be a lot of ebbs and flows during the course of the season. Guys are going to get hot. Guys are going to get cold. Jacob Chirio, at 21 years old, who know they're not going to trade because he doesn't walk enough, he is still developing what he's going to be as a big league player. Today, he is currently 2 for 3 in the game with a home run and a strikeout. Turang, though, on the other hand, is 0 for 3. When you have young players like Turang and Chirio, you're going to have a lot of ups and downs throughout the year. And in reality, too, this is a game of baseball. The game of baseball is a roller coaster. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs. The thing is don't get too high for the highs, don't get too low for the lows, and just enjoy the ride and let the season play out. I'm not saying don't complain because guys aren't playing up to the potential you think they should be playing at. Just understand that there's going to be ups and downs during the course of a big league season. So I'm going to stop there. Going to likely do another show on Thursday to talk some WWE and other things. But I appreciate you all tuning in today. This has been Talking Sports with Evan. I appreciate you all watching and listening and being a support. The show continues to grow, and I do appreciate that. And I hope that I will talk to you all later. Have a good night, everybody.